restaurants or dry cleaners or biotech firms or marketing firms. They interact with other professors. And so you go through college, you get a PhD program, you become a professor. Why would you know anybody who's out there in that larger world? But think about a visual arts department. Digital media arts. You interview anybody in Hollywood. I've interviewed them. They don't want just a mechanic. They want kids who can tell stories, who can write. That means literature majors. They want kids who can draw and visualize and be very creative. That's an art major. But to know how to use your literature and your art in a work setting is what the professors are not currently equipped to do. And that's where I think we could help close the gap. And that's what I mean by the disconnect between those who teach and train and those who employ and develop. And then, of course, lifelong learning, the business I'm in, is seen as a business. It's a source of income, mostly, for universities, not a core educational commitment. Wonderful new book came out, if anybody's interested in the points that I've been making, by Linda Gratton. She calls it The Shift. The future of work is already here. And she makes 3 points about work and the changing character of work today that lead me to feel in very deep and excited ways that our colleges and universities are poised to be the central institutions in their communities moving forward. Her first point is we live in an age where serial mastery is essential. That what that means is you master different things as the job requirements change or as the global economy changes or technology changes. And so even in the same job, you do it a different way over 40 or 50 years at the end of your experience than at the beginning. But it also means that many, many people master new fields and new careers and move from career to career. And so the idea of further education and lifelong learning has to be an embedded part of all that we do. We also live in a world where social capital is important. I gave a speech yesterday in San Diego where I said there are 3 things that can guarantee you success. If you have mastery of a good body of knowledge, if you have a really tradable set of skills, and you're in fantastic networks. You gotta be connected to people, because that's where how you learn, where the knowledge and the skills you have are of value. And so increasingly, people like to hang out with other people. And universities are wonderful settings for that. Alumni associations and learning and retirement programs are examples of that. But we've seen, for example, at San Diego, exponential growth in programs like Social Sciences Supper Club, right? Now that doesn't sound too sexy, does it? But I don't know. You're a political scientist. I'm a sociologist. They asked me to come and talk about my book, and there were 90 people who were not sociologists. You know, they were attorneys and they were other. People want to be around other people with good ideas who are doing interesting things that they can connect back to their work. And our colleges and universities are full of that kind of talent. And we can organize, and that's a kind of knowledge exchange. It's a kind of way of sharing what we know and sharing values. So her notion is more and more people like to hang out with a big ideas crowd. The young people in the room won't be as familiar with what I'm about to say, but at the Aspen Institute, which has been in business for about 40 years, is a sort of a think tank that brings smart people together on big important topics. And about 7 years ago, they started something called the Aspen Ideas Festival. And 2,000 or 3,000 people come to that. The New Yorker magazine, the New York Times, the Atlantic Monthly are all doing idea events because people want, the world is being affected so much by the global changes, the technology changes, people want to be around big ideas. But because her third point is we live in a world where people have multiple careers and interact on a daily basis with both local and global communities, they need a regenerative community. And again, this may be less significant to those of you who are young, but virtually larger and larger numbers of adults with college degrees are on airplanes, going to meetings, representing their product, connecting to a global economy, living in hotels, you know, not months at a time, but for significant periods of time. And her point is, in that kind of world, a local regenerative community really matters. And again, I see colleges and universities as the kind of intellectual and social home. So, in conclusion, what do I think we need to do? And you'll see some of my op-eds. I'm a big advocate of liberal arts education. I do not believe an undergraduate degree should necessarily teach you how to do accounting or how to design a website. But that's because I interview all these people who say, I want a well-educated person who can design a website. And so what I'm suggesting is that we probably need to build on that liberal arts degree. Work experiences or certificated programs, like extension programs do, that bridge them to employment. But we have to increase as well the faculty appreciation of the kinds of skill demands that are being made on our graduates. We really don't understand the world of work. University of Wisconsin, big land-grant university, takes all of their first-year faculty on a bus trip of the state. They visit beer factories in Milwaukee, they visit dairies, they go up to Appleton, Wisconsin, and visit paper-making plants. And when they come back as assistant professors, they're told, this is who we work for. And it doesn't necessarily change the content of what goes on in the classroom, but it may change the sympathies with which the professor teaches that content and what he knows about his students. We need more practical knowledge among our own faculty. And we also may need in our curriculum to build more collaborative projects, meaningful internships, and academically linked summer employment. And I'm also going to be an advocate for a better appreciation of the value of lifelong learning. If you look at the university extension enrollments from Berkeley to San Diego, which are over 300,000 a year, more than half of those are UC graduates who are getting certificates as a bridge to employment. The literature major who's learning to do web design. The biology major who's learning to do clinical trials management. The sociology major who's going to work in development for a not-for-profit organization. And the good liberal arts degree is essential, but the certificate bridges them to employment. And that certificate program does three things for them. One, it gives them skills that are needed in those workplaces. Two, it gives them access to employers and practitioners who can hire them or recommend jobs or validate that they, in addition to having a college degree, really can design a website. But three, it puts them in a network of fellow students who are working through a program who can be resources to them and help them navigate their transition to the world of work. These programs are also places where 40-year-olds and 60-year-olds come back to retool and to change careers. So in conclusion, today's gap between workplace opportunities and what citizens really need can be closed, in my opinion, if we do four things, which don't require a lot of new money. They require new thinking about what we already do. And that is that we can transform the teaching and learning experience so that it can be more meaningful and applicable in a larger setting. We can show people how to put their knowledge to work, in part maybe by enhancing our own faculty with adjuncts, but also through projects. We must, in my opinion, and it's not just because of my Swedish roots and my Korean daughter-in-law, we must increase the global content of curriculum in both formal education and in our publicly funded training programs. I think there's some EDD people here, and I just want to do a quick aside before I conclude. I did some work evaluating programs for the U.S. Department of Labor, and I evaluated supplier companies in central Michigan who supplied to the automobile industry, and the automobile industry had all the layoffs, and so they were in deep trouble. And the local economic development folks said, well, we've got to go national, we've got to go global, and wanted to use EDD funds to train them in global marketing and other skills. And they were disqualified because that wasn't work related, but it was business development related. So we have to understand that when in the old days we thought of as soft skills, things like marketing and things like foreign languages, maybe essential skills if we're going to keep those jobs in America. Because we will lose those jobs if we don't have those skills to other countries that do. So we need to substantially increase the global content, not just at the university level, but across our workforce development programs. And I think we have to, I feel equally strongly, increase our investment in opportunities for students and citizens to learn entrepreneurial skills so that they can be adaptive throughout their careers and create their own businesses. So I hope that provoked you a little or interested you a little, and we can have some discussion. Thank you. Yes.
Yes, I'm Dr. Judy Chelstrom from UC Davis, and I run the biotechnology program, so I applaud you for every statement that you made, because we have a graduate program in which we send these PhD scientists out to industry, and we believe that business skills and entrepreneurial skills are the driver of many of the science and technology.
Right.
So I have a request. May I get a copy of your PowerPoint so I can
Oh,
share
sure.
that with
Yeah,
my
they have it
students?
here, and
We'll post it.
Good,
just
good.
we'll post it for
Great.
sure.
Thank you.
Other comments, observations? Yes.
Just a very practical question.
Yeah.
As a junior, someone who's
Okay.
going to be out in the workforce, and we're in this educational system that you say, I'm a international relations and econ major, very, theory.
That's good.
What marketable skills, what can someone my age do to be more equipped for the job force?
Well, part of the reason I gave you the examples of the little Susie Zoo and other things is you could probably find a job in your hometown with somebody that's doing international business, right? Whether it's sales or importing or, design, research, a research program, to actually get some hands-on experience, even if it's on a small scale. It could be banking, it could be real estate. So one thing I would suggest you do is that. And what's your second language?
I'm actually Italian.
Okay, and
Is
you
it
read?
not useful? Yeah, I mean.
If I were your age, I would either get a job in a globally trained, in a little company or a medium-sized company that does global business, so I could get some hands-on experience, or I'd take an immersion writing and reading course in a second language. There was a woman there, and then I'll jump here. Yeah.
What do you see as the practical possibility
of the things you've recommended actually happening? And do you see anything in public policy, which currently is about cutting the access to the public universities altogether? Do you see any way that policy could eventually promote that kind of activity, which all of those things make sense and then some?
I think there are pushes and pulls. I think that there aren't the tax incentives for education and training. If employers, do you see what I mean, could get better tax write-offs, they might invest more at the adult level. At the young adult level, this may not be the response you were looking for. I think part of the problem is within our own institutions, okay? Independent of the external funding environment. I think, and I do want to go back to this attitude, because I feel it very strongly at UCSD, you know, that our liberal arts education at any cost, including at the cost of the community colleges and or of smaller institutions in the system. And so I think there needs to be some kind of incentive within educational institutions, right? To reward, if you will, or give more resources to programs which deliberately introduce international components or language components, to programs which deliberately introduce internships, mentors, project learning, to programs, to summer programs which connect cohorts of students with certain industry clusters that might be promising. And I think it's possible to align incentives those ways, because I've been in the UC system now for 40 years, and I've seen how it's worked. I mean, there was a period there, you remember, suddenly schools of engineering were getting more and more teachers, right? And the state legislature was behind it because industry organized to support that. So I think there are, within educational systems, things that you can do. The declining resources and value placed on the outside is problematic, but again, I'm going to give you a common sense. I'm not smart about public policy like the guys who run this center are, but I'm going to give you just sort of a common sense response. The community colleges, which in my opinion are vital partners in this larger ecosystem of a qualified workforce, have been so captive of getting their students into CSU or UC that at least in my town, the equipment, the instructors, the tools they need to qualify really first-rate technical and semi-professional workers are not at their disposal. So the incentives in the community colleges, everybody's become sort of captive of the A through G or whatever they're called requirements. And I don't know how we unlock that problem. And then there is the larger, when I do interview my colleagues at the community colleges, in addition to saying, I don't have labs, you know, I can't teach nurses because I don't have the equipment for nursing education. I know you need geriatric nurses and oncology nurses and da-da-da-da, but we don't have the equipment, we don't have the instructors. And then even when they do have the equipment and the instructors, they often don't have the students coming out of the high schools with the literacy skills. So it's a huge problem, but I do think there is a repurposing, if you will, of existing assets that needs to take place within higher education. And I'm not sure how you align those incentives. Is that public policy? Is that a new chancellor at UC San Diego? I'm not sure how that happens. I'm sorry I'm not more sophisticated, but yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if, based on your comments about you think you value like a liberal education, and
Yeah.
you talked about examples where people have gotten a degree, but then they followed it up with more specific job training. So I'm wondering if you think that right now we're trying to do too much with like a bachelor's degree where
Yes.
there's this huge number of majors and they're trying to make them connected to a particular job, but then the connection doesn't work. So I wonder if would you give more like a more simplified, kind of like smaller number of where it's more general, you get a general education, and then it's expected you're going to go in and get specific training.
I'm always afraid to say it because I am a dean of an extension program, so it sounds like a commercial. But when I graduated from college in 1964, small liberal arts college, there were recruiters galore on the campus, hiring people, including the federal government, into 3 to 6 month training programs, and then you get a job. And in the old days, industry, and we have data on this, did a lot more workforce development. In other words, bridge you from college into your career. Today, that bridging activity is on the shoulders of the employee because of the restructuring of industry. That's why extension programs in particular for college grads, but some of the community college programs can do this too, we call them bridges to employment. I think the world we live in, every parent should say to their child, get a damn good liberal arts education and then get 2 or 3 great work experiences, either as an intern or as a first job, and then take some kind of certificate program that puts you right in the heart, in the swim of things, of where you want to go. A lot of those students, like my son, the professional golfer, figured out law. No, he really did. And he went right into law school, and it was just perfect for him. But for, and many kids want to get a master, discover they want to get a master's or a PhD. But right now, parents, colleges, and universities say, well, after you get your bachelor's degree, you get a job, or else you get a master's degree or a PhD or a law degree. No, go into a certificate program in a practice area that values your liberal arts education, but connects you to a part of the economy where you might be able to make a life for a while. And so I feel very strongly we need to do that as a society. Yeah.
I do have to differ a little bit
Yeah.
with that because I'm in the science engineering side of the
Yeah,
house.
you guys are a little better.
Again, if you don't get started in high school with taking the right math series and the
you were
chemistry and the
absolutely right.
physics, we can't backtrack and teach you something in 1 year.
No.
But what we want is to take those science and engineering students and do service learning, do internships to develop the right side of their brain because they get a little bit too narrow.
But you are a prime example of what a university can do. You're doing it. But you're, I think, the exception, not the rule, among research universities in this country. But there are more and more programs like yours. And I agree, that's what I was alluding to with the literacy skills in the health field. It's not just the math and science skills. You've got to be able to read a textbook and not go through half a textbook in a year, but the whole textbook. And to write and to communicate. Other comments or observation, please?
You mentioned that extended education is treated more like a revenue center than an educational commitment. But as a result, it seems that it's very responsive to consumer demand.
It's market, it has to be.
Right. So what would look different?
Well, I think what would look different to me is exactly what she was articulating, that in the core undergraduate curriculum, is what I'm arguing, there would be more opportunity for young people at 18, 19, and 20 to be introduced to the kinds of work settings and the skills, maybe not with a deep dive, and the networks that they get in these extension programs. And I think the other thing is that there are some areas of competency that may not be able to be supported in a market economy and deserve to be funded, right? And right now, we're going pretty much in the direction of we'll only do what people pay for. And I think the core value of any comprehensive university or liberal arts college is I keep the religion or the philosophy department or the Spanish, Spanish languages in my place now, because it's an important part of what we do as a research university. And I think there are certain skill and competency areas where it's much harder to monetize them in a marketplace. And so we would embrace a wider range of opportunities for our kids. Yes?
So how do you compete or ensure, at the UC and the state extension programs, it's a quality product that folks are paying for in generally. But what about all these kind of more diploma mill, certificate mill?
I think they filled the void. I honestly think if we had embraced, I look at something like web-based learning and distance learning, which UC, virtually no UC campus, I think UCLA now has a few engineering degrees using web-based learning, have embraced. And it's been understood as, oh, that's something the less qualified student needs, as opposed to this is a tool that would enhance our ability to embrace a wider range of qualified students. Am I making sense? I think we have some real cultural problems there. And so I see so that's one response, but I think there is a second response, and that is that never in our history has advanced knowledge been so important to so many fields. So we cannot, as UC, be all things to all people, right? And so if you look at National University, which is home-based in my town, actually I can walk to the president's office from my office, about a mile from where I am, and you look at the curriculum that they're offering, it looks very different than UC's curriculum or CSU's curriculum. And actually it looks very much like Extension's curriculum. But they give degrees. We in UC, I think, argue, now you want a liberal arts grad, you really do. You really want a broadly well-educated person, and then we'll add. You see, it's a difference in philosophy. So you can get a degree in digital media arts from National University. At UC San Diego, you'll get a certificate. But you'll have a degree in visual arts. I don't know if I'm making sense, but there's this differentiation in the marketplace. And depending on the character of the industry, right, and the nature of its product, level of sophistication, or how global it is, you will choose between those two kinds of employees. But if I can just go back to what I started with, National University produces most of the certified teachers in California because the University of California cut back significantly on teacher education. National University and proprietary schools are producing most of the nurses in California because UC medical schools deciding nursing wasn't important enough. So we have played a role when our society needs people with these skills, and we choose to say those aren't advanced enough, and now all of a sudden, an oncology nurse? Wait, that's not the little RN of the 1950s with the Red Cross hat. We're talking about a really sophisticated medical professional. So it's multidimensional.
Because I see a need for the person that maybe can't go to a traditional, stop
Right.
working or raising their kids or whatever for however many years, 4, 5, 6 years, wants to get a college degree, and they can only do it, between the hours of 8 p.m. and 2 a.m.
Right. And those institutions, I happen to respect national universities, so I think those institutions provide an option. But and they're building their liberal arts faculty because our own PhDs can't get jobs teaching. So at least in San Diego, lots of literature, history, and economics PhDs are working for National University. And so, I mean, something's going on here. It's so complex, I really don't know how to evaluate. I don't think any institution can be all things to all people. And UC's enrollments, we've got waiting lists, right? And we're doing very well, thank you. It's just, I don't know if we have the hearts and minds of the state legislature if we're not doing a little bit more for our regional economies. Yes?
So, this shows my own naivete about this,
Yeah.
but so you said that half your students in Extension are in fact UC grads, right?
Yeah.
So how do you characterize the UC students that go on to UC Extension? I mean, how many of them are doing it before they finish UC? How many are coming back for training for second careers?
No, most of them come within a year of graduating from UC. They discover that they're working in the same retail jobs they were working in when they were 18. And because they don't know how to get jobs, right? So they say, oh, maybe I'll take an extension course, or I'll go through their career planning center.
So the lion's share of them are really recent grads
yes.
who come immediately back and do something.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but there are two cohorts, because, I mean, it's, the biggest cohort is that sort of 22 to 32-year-old group.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's another group of 40 to 50-year-olds that are really the mid-career changers and that sort of thing. So it's a very, very interesting phenomenon. And I actually think it's a good thing. I mean, I think the state of California has actually benefited from this system. I kind of like the way the UC system works, but I agree, and I hope I came across that way in my remarks, that if kids don't have language or science or some international experience or some hands-on experience until they're 22 or 23, they're going to be severely disadvantaged in the labor force. And so more of that earlier, I think, is desirable. Yes?
What do you think of the role of universities being a driver of your regional economies? I know Linda Capay is really stressing the fact that, you know, the innovation that we really see in science and engineering can be translated out into the marketplace, and then we can create a multitude of jobs. So you know, your accounting students, your human resource students, they can all be clustered.
Well, that's certainly the San Diego story. But I'm more modest. I'm not sure if we're the driver so much as the hub. Because if you look at San Diego, just some data points, 3,000 new companies in the last 25 years, 120 UC spinouts. Now, if you start counting the graduate students, right, or the graduates who started companies, that's another 1,000 or so. And so it's not as though we're spinning them out directly, it's that our knowledge is like a cauldron of intellectual capital and talent. And it also, the data in San Diego is very interesting because UCSD graduates couldn't get jobs in San Diego, the vast majority, and now that's flipped. There's a great demand for UCSD graduates because of the nature of the companies, and you're absolutely right. It's for political science and sociology students, not just engineers and scientists, but students with some demonstrable skills. I think we've done it.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you for your question. If you want the slides, they're on the web, and I've got some op-ed pieces here if you want some of these sound bites. Yes, I am. Oh my goodness. Oh, yes.
I love this.